nationwide strike is underway in Israel. It's organized by the families of captives that are still held in Gaza. So this mass action is expected to shut down schools, businesses, and public transport across the country. Several rallies are planned, including a big demonstration in Tel Aviv. Protesters say that they want to pressure the government into signing a Gaza ceasefire and captive release deal with Hamas. They fear that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to seize Gaza City will endanger the lives of their loved ones. Alon Pinkas is a former Israeli diplomat. You served, Alon, as Israel's consul general in New York, and you're joining us from Tel Aviv. It's always good to talk to you. How are people around you talking about this day of action today?
On the one hand, they're very happy that it's taking place. I mean, the people who are participating in it that I speak with, obviously. Many are active in it, but the true test of this, Cyril, is not whether today is going to be impressive and broad and encompass the entire country, which it probably will, already is to a degree. But the question is sustainability and durability. I mean, if this is a one-day show of force or demonstration or goodwill or frustration or airing of grievances and anger, that's fine, that's understandable. But if it's a one-day thing, the impact would be minimal, marginal, close to zero, because in 2 days, everyone is going to forget this. And it's pretty difficult to organize this again, unless it is sustainable and unless it rolls over into the next day and the next day, like the demonstrations that Israel experienced in 2023 against Mr. Netanyahu's anti-democratic constitutional coup. Now, people are frustrated, but there is one thing that is interesting to note, Cyril. The entire focus of this is on the hostages, not necessarily on ending the war, not on what's going on in Gaza, not on the political endgame, which does not exist, but just on the hostages. That's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It should be done. But this is a very focused, very laser pinpointed campaign. And I go back to the point I just made. It's important to reiterate it. If this is a one-day thing, it will achieve nothing.
Okay, I'm glad you say that, because we've asked so many versions of the question, in the last 2 years, like how much pressure is too much pressure for Netanyahu? And you've given us a pretty clear answer. If it's a one day of action, or even if it's every week, then no, it won't have effect. But if it's sustained for weeks, then we have seen it had effect shortly before October 7th. Then he did have to cave and rein in his judicial overhaul.
Exactly right, Cyril. I'll tell you more than that. There's a convergence, there's a cumulative effect that is formed as a result of the convergence of issues. You mentioned in your previous conversation the Prime Minister of Denmark. Add to that Australia, Britain, France, and Canada's decision to recognize a hypothetical or future Palestinian state. Add to that what is expected in September at the UN General Assembly on that very issue. Add to that a communique signed by 24 foreign ministers, mostly European, but not only European countries, demanding that Netanyahu end the war now. Add to this the internal demonstration and strife inside Israel, coalition issues, and all of that could bring him to the point of caving. Right now, look, this is a man who did not take responsibility and refuses to be held accountable for what had happened, for the debacle and the catastrophe of the Hamas terror attack on October 7th. He refuses to take responsibility for the prosecution of the war, which he heralded and boasted would end Hamas and eviscerate Hamas and topple Hamas, and total victory, he called it. That hasn't happened. And so until now, he's hanging by a thread by virtue of a relatively stable but very, very narrow coalition. All these dynamics that I described, the international pressure, and if there is a sustained effort inside Israel in terms of demonstrations and protests, that could break the coalition. It's a combination of speculation and estimate here, but if it's like you said, Cyril, if it's going to end today, he will just, he will just brush it off as a piece of lint that he found on his jacket.
So as far as what specifically the protesters want, Benjamin Netanyahu had a deal. Israel had a deal with Hamas back in January and February that saw captives be released on a weekly basis. If he had stuck to that deal, they would all be out by now. Am I right to
Correct.
assume that to the extent that we can define what the protesters want, they want a deal like the one they had? Is that right?
Absolutely. The demonstrators, it's a big number of people, and not all are versed on the details of withdrawal and redeployment and the modalities and the timetables and and the sequencing. But yes, that's exactly right. I'll tell you more than that, Cyril. There was a ceasefire agreement that was signed in January, a joint effort of the outgoing Biden administration and the incoming Trump administration. Israel violated that agreement on the 18th of March, 2025. These demonstrations that we're talking about today, that is the reason why we're having this conversation, these demonstrations should have began in March. We are almost in September. That's almost 6 months. 6 months, the Israeli public was just, so dejected, so agonizing, so devastated, so paralyzed politically that it allowed the war to continue and the horrible scenes coming out of Gaza. And basically what the demonstrators are saying now, Cyril, is let's go back to the March plan, the January plan that was violated in March.
Alon Pinkas, former Israeli diplomat, thank you very much, as ever, for joining us on the Al Jazeera NewsHour.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.